Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our COVID-19 vaccine rollout, a quick update for general practice. My name's Jenny Pearson. I'm an Education Officer for the Primary Health Network and I sit in Armidale. Just before we go any further, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians on the land that we meet on today and pay respect to elders past, present and emerging. Our presenter today is Kimberly Booth. She's the COVID response lead for the Primary Health Network. And I'll hand over to Kimberly. We may not have time for question and answers as we're just doing a half-hour session, but we will do a summary of all the questions that are asked and try and answer everything, and I'll send it out to you all. There will be an evaluation that will pop up at the end of the webinar, so I'd really appreciate it if you could just take 20 seconds to fill that out. And this is being recorded and a copy will be put up on our website in our resource library. And when you get your confirmation email tomorrow with your certificate of attendance, it will have that web address. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Jen. Can I just confirm you can see the slides?
No, we can't see the slides. They've disappeared.
Okay. I will share again. Bear with me. There we go.
Yep.
Can you see that? Lovely.
Yep.
All right, I'm just going to go back to the previous one and do my own acknowledgement and say I would just firstly like to acknowledge the traditional owners on the various lands that we're meeting on today and pay my respect to elders past, present and emerging. So as Jen mentioned just in the introduction, this is just a really brief update on a couple of, I guess, changes that have happened in the last sort of few weeks with the rollout and some answers to some really frequently asked questions that we're receiving at the PHN, just to try and help you throughout this very confusing process that you're all doing an amazing job of, I might just say. Working from home, the joys of lockdown at the moment. So with the internet, it's certainly quite stable at the moment, but I am going to turn my camera off while I go through the slides, just in case there's any glitches with the audio. All right. So, as I said, this is what we're going to cover, just some frequently asked questions, and they are ones that we've noticed over recent weeks have sort of come up many times from many practices. So we thought the easiest way would be just to compile a really quick update with some answers around things like Pfizer, especially the expression of interest and who's eligible and when. And so I'll just work my way through. The first one being, this is probably the most common, I think, that we've received understandably in recent weeks. Majority of our practices in the region, across the Hunter, New England, Central Coast region, have submitted an expression of interest to commence with Pfizer. And this question is quite understandably coming up quite frequently. So I hope you can see that. Here's some answers. Now, I wanted to just explain again I guess the process for selection. The Department of Health made their selection for 3 groups of practices that will commence during July with Pfizer. Any of the practices, because as I say, large amount of you have submitted an EOI. So if you weren't selected by the Department of Health in those first few groups, you have absolutely been deemed as eligible and you've been added to the overall list. So the department have your practice information, your eligibility status, and the next dot point is it's quite wordy, but I just wanted to copy in the exact wording that the department are basically asking us to communicate out, which is just as the Pfizer vaccine supply increases, the department will be progressively onboarding all of the other additional eligible practices, and the timeline that they've given us at the moment is over coming months. So understand that that's not hugely specific, and it's not giving you an actual date. We anticipate that will get a little bit tightened and probably more specific in the next few weeks as the first groups commence rolling out with the Pfizer vaccine and the supply starts to look a little bit more stable. The next part of the slide here is another part to the question, really, and that we do receive a number of queries from practices who still want to submit an EOI, and that's absolutely fine. It's an open EOI process, and you can still submit your interest, and we will still add it to the department list, and your name and practice will still be included when they come back to us with the next round of onboarding. And the next question I imagine would be, how do we do it? So on our website, thepHN.com.au, under the section programs, there is a COVID-19 vaccine general practice preparedness section, and it largely has templates, resources, toolkits, everything to support you preparing and participating in the vaccine rollout. And something that was developed just this week by the primary care improvement team, and I believe is live now on there, is what's called the I've missed a 9. It's actually COVID-19 quick guide, and it's a one-page document that has a number of either quick links or answers to similar questions, everything that you should probably need at this time in one page, including the link to where you can submit your interest to participate in the Pfizer rollout. Right, this is the next one. This has come up quite a bit, understandably. There's quite a number of changes in recent times about ATAGI and the recommendations for the AstraZeneca vaccine. So what are the changes? So probably the two key ones would be on the 17th of June. The advice was updated, just recommending AstraZeneca as the preferred vaccine for those aged 60 and over. And before that, you would remember there was a slight change where it was 50 and over, but again, it was updated on the 17th of June. Just recently, 13th of July, a ATAGI statement on the dose intervals for AstraZeneca vaccine in the context of a COVID outbreak like is currently being experienced down in South Sydney. And the pHN, we actually sent out some official Department of Health communication and letter this week. And the next part of this presentation, I will be asking to get some updated confirmation about what's the best email address to communicate with you and your practice about these sorts of updates, because we are hearing a number of practices saying that they're not actually receiving what we're sending out. So we just want to make sure that we're sending it to as many and the most appropriate and best person in your practice for this type of update. Right, so probably the most frequent query or request or concern that we receive at the pHN is usually around practice information on the Vaccine Clinic Finder directory that is either missing or it's incorrect, or sometimes we're finding there are changes to onboarding or eligibility. Practice information is not necessarily aligning with when these announcements are made. And this is probably the most frequent, I guess, request, is just to say, can you please update it, or how do we fix this? Oops, I'm going to go back one slide. My apologies. Okay, so the answer to that is the pHN, us as a team, we don't have access to the Vaccine Clinic Finder directory directly. We are absolutely able to facilitate, though, the information being updated to the Department of Health. So the Department of Health work with Health Direct, and they are constantly working to provide ongoing updates to the eligibility checker, the criteria, and also, again, the information that is listed for your practice, for each practice when you become live on that Clinic Finder directory. A number of times we've understandably received a lot of frustration from practices because there's been delays to that information making it to the clinic finder and it being reflected and updated. The advice from the Department of Health continues to be that they are working to try and have these updates reflected within 24 to 48 hours. Sometimes we've noticed ourselves that there have been delays, and unfortunately the PHN not being able to update ourselves, we don't have any control over the timing of when these changes are made live. However, we are able to always go back to the department if you've noticed it's been some time and your update hasn't been received or you can't see it on there. Please let us know, because we are able to go back to them and try and get a rush on those that have been outstanding for longer than that is ideal. All right, eligibility. So this changes, it seems you'd have to agree, almost weekly. No, I'm exaggerating, but it does change that often that it's very confusing and understandably very hard to keep up with. So this question comes up. Who's currently eligible? Which one are they eligible for? And how do we find out? Now, I didn't want to put it on a slide because it's just a really long list, especially when we come to the Pfizer eligibility. But what I thought I'd do instead is just remind you that the provider bulletin that the department released, the 13th of July version that we did send out, and it is listed on the department's website. It did contain a whole page of the most current eligibility, not necessarily criteria, but who is eligible for AstraZeneca and who is eligible for Pfizer, breaks down the age groups, and it also explains if there are any additional criteria specifically with Pfizer around eligibility. I would definitely encourage you to always go to the eligibility checker if you're unsure. That is one thing that we have seen seems to be very consistent in being updated as a priority. When we see that there's an announcement to a change in anything to do with the rollout, or there's a new group that's being included or becomes eligible, that is overnight. We are noticing it's updated very, very quickly. And even with a recent announcement after the cabinet meeting about patients over 18 being able to request and have a conversation, discuss the risks and benefits around the AstraZeneca vaccine, the eligibility checker was updated by the very next morning, and it also contained links from there if you are a patient booking in to go straight to the fact sheets and the other material that the department have developed and put out around AstraZeneca vaccine, so they can make an informed decision. So that's one really good positive, and it is consistent. I can tell you that it is being updated. So if you're unsure, go in and check the checker online. And of course, both of our health pathways sites, so we've got a Hunter New England and also Central Coast, and I will talk more about that a little bit later. They are your source of truth. They are source of truth for clinical information, but also for patient resources or patient information as well. So they are regularly reviewed, regularly updated, and localized to ensure that you're getting information that's specific to the region. And that was the slide that I had. I've mixed my slides up, so we don't have to worry about that one because I have already taken you through that. But you will appreciate the next slide, I think, because I have a feeling this is probably what it's like for you guys. And I certainly don't mean to make light of it, but again, I think I can only imagine what the phones are like, what the tension's like, and how things can escalate very, very quickly overnight in terms of the phones and patient queries and confusion when there is a change to the rollout. So what I wanted to do was to basically clear up a little bit and clarify and reassure you about the things that the PHN, our team, can do for you and what we can control. And then on the next slide, what I'm also going to outline is some of the things that we don't, as much as we wish we did, we don't have control over, and we unfortunately aren't able to predict time frames and some of the missing information to the next steps in the rollout. I guess that is causing a whole lot of frustration, understandably. So what we can do and what we can control is we always have rapid access to Department of Health information and updates as it's released. The PHN make it a priority regardless of when this information comes out to ensure that you receive it as soon as we do. Sometimes there is reports that it's not necessarily going to the right email address at the practice, and we update that immediately so that the very next update is, we ensure we know is going to the right people. So another thing that we can do is the clinical health pathways and patient resources. Now, obviously, I just spoke before of the benefits of health pathways, and again, it really is something that we can genuinely offer you as a clinician and also for your patients, especially when it's something that's rapidly changing, like the vaccine rollout. And our primary care improvement team, apart from the fact that they're amazing at everything, they have also developed a huge range of COVID-19 and COVID vaccine specific guides, checklists, toolkits, and what I just discussed earlier in this presentation, which is just that one-page quick reference guide that sort of lists some really important and commonly used hyperlinks and information and answers to questions. Some of the things that we can't control despite wishing we could. For any of the rounds of EOI, so any of the expressions of interest that have been announced or called upon by the Department of Health, with the PHN unfortunately is unable to have any, we don't have the final say in the approval or the selection of the sites, and we are not in control of when sites actually commence with, whether it be AstraZeneca or Pfizer. The weekly vaccine dose allocations, that's also something that is out of our hands. We have visibility over the numbers that you're getting, but that's after the decision has been made by the Department of Health, as they're pulling together their onboarding material for whatever round of practice onboarding that is. And those sneaky little media releases and rollout change announcements that sort of come on a Sunday, or when you're trying to just have a relaxing breathing space from this rollout madness. Unfortunately, again, that is not something that we can control, and we absolutely understand what it can cause rapidly within the practice and the community as well. And just as I mentioned before, the Vaccine Clinic Finder practice details, we can definitely communicate these through and request the updates on your behalf, but we can't make the changes ourselves, unfortunately. All right, I am going a little bit over time, I think, and I'm sorry about that, but I've got a few more slides to go through, which is to let you know we're here to help. And I genuinely mean that. The PHN team, the primary care improvement team, our receptionists, our COVID team, everybody at the PHN is genuinely here to help you in your practice get through this. When I say we understand, we're not in the practice, but we definitely understand what you must be going through. We empathize and wish that sometimes we had a magic wand to take it all away and just make all the panic and the phone calls settle. But we do think you're doing a fantastic job. You did a fantastic job last year, and you're doing it again this year despite very challenging circumstances. And I don't say that lightly. We genuinely do think that. So help us help you. Now, in this top point about the vaccine inbox, we were initially in the early stages before the information was very clear, and we were a lot further down the track with the vaccine rollout, directing everything to the vaccine inbox, understandably. But now that we're a bit further along the rollout process, what we'd like is the vaccine inbox to be used for those really tricky, curly, specific questions that I'm not sure why that's pausing my screen. I will just give it another go and pop us back to the slideshow. There we go. My apologies, everybody. Okay, so yeah, those specific questions that, you know, we may have to go to the department on your behalf and get an individual response to, those are the sorts of ones that do take a little bit more time and a little bit more investigation, and we do want to prioritise getting you an answer to those ones. So we're trying a number of different methods to get the information out to you about those real common questions that come up all the time for you and for your patients. And when we send out the provider bulletins or emails or newsletters, it would be great if you could just really check that everyone in the practice is getting the information, or anyone that's involved with the rollout, because we are finding the provider bulletins seem to have some really comprehensive information that usually links in with a recent change. So they are becoming even more beneficial now than they were when the department first started releasing them. And as I mentioned earlier, the email addresses that we have for your practice, it's the one that you originally used when you submitted the expression of interest to commence in the rollout right at the beginning. And if that's not who you would like us to communicate with now, or that person's in a different role in the practice or they've left, please let us know, because we want to make sure that we're sending you, or the right people in the practice are receiving this really critical information. And health pathways, again, definitely visit the pages, because it's not necessarily even a daily, sometimes it's twice daily updates that the team are rapidly making live on those clinical pathway sites. Okay, more information other than some of the sources that I've told you already. This is the web page that I spoke of earlier that is under our programs section. So you go to the phn.com.au, programs, and there is a COVID-19 vaccine practice preparedness section with a whole range of tools, toolkits, resources, and that one-page guide, quick reference guide. Now, I know I've gone over time, I'm really sorry, but I did promise our Health Pathways team now just that I would give you a little bit of a run through of the Hunter New England and also the Central Coast. I will give you, as you should see on the screen now, their login details. So on the left are the login details for Hunter New England, and on the right are the Central Coast Health Pathways login details. And again, as Jen mentioned earlier in the presentation, we will be sending the slides or uploading the slides along with the recording of this presentation, so you don't have to worry about madly writing down passwords now. All right, so this is what it looks like when you're trying to search for COVID-19 vaccination information. If you're looking specifically for rollout information, this can be found on the vaccination information page under Health Professional Resources, and you can actually see that highlighted in yellow. If you feel anything that is useful is not listed on the Pathways sites for either Hunter New England or Central Coast, there is a feedback button on the pathway itself. Send feedback, and that will just give you, it'll pop up a little box and you'll be able to just type in some comments and feedback, and the team will be able to see that directly and include that for the next update. Okay, this is for the Central Coast site. So information on how to refer for vaccination can be found under COVID-19 referrals, and on the Hunter New England site on their new COVID-19 referrals and advice page. And I really apologise if you can hear the thunder in the background, but the weather has just started to close in around us. All right, this is the very last slide. Now, this is the one that is great for patients and community. This one doesn't require a password, and both the Central Coast and Hunter New England patient info sites are also regularly updated with all the latest evidence-based, reliable COVID-19 information. There's a special feature tile for COVID-19 vaccines, and when patients click on this, they'll find general vaccine information as well as more specific info around preparation and consent. And that is the end of the slideshow. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I'll pop my camera back on, and Jen, I'll bring you back into, bear with me a moment. Okie doke. So Jen, I'll throw back over to you again, everybody. It's not all of the information about the rollout. I would have to book an entire day, and I know nobody has enough time to dedicate a whole day to listening to updates. So I hope that I've at least answered a couple of your most burning questions, and we'll try and offer something like this again in a couple of weeks, especially if we have any more changes in the next couple of weeks. So all the very best, and you're doing a fantastic job, guys. You really are. Thanks, Jen.
Thanks, Kimberly. Thanks everybody for attending. I just wanted to bring to your attention, we've got 2 webinars on next week, one on Wednesday night starting at 7 p.m, which is The Right Medicine, Paths Out of Opioid Use. And on Thursday night at 6:30, we have a bit of a different topic, which you might all appreciate having a break from COVID, climate change, health and practical sustainability. So that's being sustainable in your practice. So something that's very topical and very much needed. Thanks everybody for attending. I hope you all have a wonderful weekend, and we'll catch you next week. Bye.